So Gary, first thing I'm going to ask you, we heard earlier on in the week from Labour that they were going to be coming forward with a proposal to all the left and centre-left parties to form a bloc at the end of this election to possibly come to a larger party to get into coalition. What's the Soc Dems position on that?
Certainly my position is I'm knocking at doors asking for people to vote for myself and encouraging others to vote for Social Democrats candidates. I absolutely want to be in government. We have a fantastic manifesto. I believe things can only be achieved through the government. But our numbers have to be vital to the formation of government. I need to be able to stand over our position as Social Democrats. So that's my position. When I go into those negotiations, and hopefully we will be there, our numbers have to be relevant. You know, we have the 5 deal breakers that we've been very clear on in relation to public childcare, healthcare, a senior minister for disabilities. But when we're going into negotiate, we have to be, and also see through those 5 years, our numbers have to be relevant. So for me, I can only stand over the Social Democrats, and that's the game I'm playing. I mean, other parties seem to spend a lot of time talking about other parties. I'm just talking about ourselves.
Sure.
And we need and we want to be in government to deliver upon the promises and the commitments that we have.
One of the, I suppose, red lines that you have for a coalition is the 50,000 affordable homes. Now, Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael have 50,000 homes full stop in their manifestos after 5 years. So looking at that first off, doesn't seem like, based off of what you're proposing, you're going to be going into coalition with them. Sinn Féin's manifesto has a massive proposal for housing. Yourselves as well, of course, has a massive proposal for housing. Are you effectively ruling out coalition with Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael with the proposals that you have for what you would like in a coalition government?
No, see, my type of politics has always been about what I'm for rather than what I'm against. I just think that's a more positive way of doing politics. So we've made it very clear that we want to be in government. So in order to, what we've demonstrated is that we have 5 non-negotiable for us, 5 areas where we think that would transform our republic into a more social democratic one. But we also know that we're not going to achieve that on our own. So we've made it very clear, if you want to talk to us, these are our conditions, and come on board. Everything else, look, we're going to negotiate hard for. But we want to be in government. But we also need to make sure that when we go in there, the people who vote for us know exactly what they're going to get.
In your housing proposals, you've got a line on socially sustainable communities in building new homes and building new villages, towns. Is that something that you could see in... I'm thinking that if it's a socially sustainable system, it's kind of rejigging the way planning operates, the way urban planning and how we build towns and cities in this country happens. Is that something that is being thought about by the Social Democrats? Yeah,
of course. So you imagine like Cian O'Callaghan and Rory Hearn, they've committed their lives to understanding the needs of housing in this country. So when they talk about socially sustainable communities, the opposite of that, for example, was the many great people who went into Ballymum when they were first developed, and there was just housing complexes without childcare facilities, without creches, without access to local supermarkets. And you can't build communities like that. You would have seen something similar with the ghost estates that sprung up during the Celtic Tiger. So as we're developing our communities, the social infrastructure of communities need to go hand in hand. So yes, we need infinitely more affordable housing, but those have to be within communities that have all of the needs of that community catered with inside of it. So that's what we're talking about when we speak of socially sustainable communities.
It sounds like a big project. How do you propose to pay for it?
Well, he's proposed to pay for it through any number of mechanisms. So we're already wasting huge amounts of money in terms of in our housing catastrophe. So we do think systems like the Apple tax money obviously gives us a huge opportunity to really transform our society. Look, housing for me is... The housing catastrophe is not just the absence of a home. It's in schools, it's the absence of the teachers because they can't afford anywhere to live. Our guards can't afford to live in the city state police, or in the towns they're asked to police. Like, this housing crisis is actually the defining crisis of Ireland. If we have Apple tax windfalls, well then we need to use that to address this area.
On taxation, you're proposing a super wealth tax in the manifesto, but it does say that family homes to a value of €2 million would be exempt from any tax liabilities on that. Do you think that's a bit of a high threshold, considering how ordinary people in the country might be in a situation that's far less than €2 million?
Of course, most people are in a situation that's far less than €2 million. But we have proposed a wealth tax, a third tier of wealth tax on that person's wealth. And I think that's what we recognise, that actually those that have more to give should actually have to give more to, should actually pay more. Look, we are Social Democrats. All of the things that we want to achieve in our manifesto will only be paid for through a person's taxation. We appreciate homes are in a different space. We've never played auction politics, for example, with the property tax. I mean, every year you'll see left-wing parties go and reduce property taxes. We haven't done that because we believe taxes are the means by which we pay for all of the things in our manifesto. But obviously this new tax we have, it's just recognising that some people have more to pay. The family home, however, it is a different scenario. People might be, as people are inheritance tax is obviously very important, but there might be different issues depending on how many people are living in the home, how many people are asked to pay for it. So we're just recognising that, but we are taxing the wealth the person has.
Mm-hmm. On immigration then, you have that you're proposing to move away from private provision for housing asylum seekers and refugees. Given that we've seen in the last year or so, you've got Newtown Mount Kennedy, you've got Dock, you've got Rosscray, places where hotels have been turned over into reception centres. Obviously, it seems to a reader of the manifesto that that's not something that you want to be doing if you were in government next time round.
No, of course it's not something we want to be doing if we're in government the next time around. Look, long before I was even in the Social Democrats Party, I was campaigning against direct provision. I don't believe you can privatise a person's suffering for another person's wealth. Look, we've been in an emergency situation at the moment, but the government haven't handled it well. The Catherine Day report called for 6 reception centres. I believe that was increased in recognition of the fact that there was a greater ask being placed on an immigration system due to the various crises and wars that were happening. But we still can't step away from our principles, that it should be the state's duty to provide for people who come here, who are claiming sanctuary, claiming asylum, and while their application is being processed, it should be the state. That's not to take away from the fact that there have been remarkable examples, such as in my own community in East Wall, for example, where a reception centre had been opened. There was some degree of furore and misinformation that led to protest. And then there was just amazing community building that also took place down there from the East Wall for All groups, from the residents in the centre who are now part of the local football teams and sports infrastructure. I've seen a scenario where in the absence of good state control and interventions, communities have to step up. But what I did see lacking was the state. Mm-hmm. So state reception centres for me are absolutely integral to how we treat people respectfully while their applications are being processed here.
Do you think the public's perception of direct provision for a long time has been that it's an inhumane system? Is giving over the responsibility to the state going to reduce the inhumanity of that in any way? Yeah,
absolutely. I believe the state has an obligation. So if you see, I see anywhere where there's a privatisation of another person's suffering as a threat. And that's not to say all the reception centres have done that. I think a lot of people have stepped up. But it's the state's duty to provide care. Nobody shouldn't be monetising other people's suffering. You would have seen that since the foundation of our state, from the Magdalen laundries all the way through, where you took people in vulnerable states and you found the means of making money out of that. That has not served us well. And the direct provision meant actually the state taking ownership of its responsibilities under our international agreements. So if there are failures falling down, it's not some private entity. It is actually the state who's held to account. So while in those centres, people should have access to food that's in their own traditions, to access to education, all of those sort of healthcare, all of those sort of aspects should be catered for by the state because it is the state's responsibility to provide.
You were mentioning earlier in the context of East Wall about protesters against refugees and asylum seekers. During the locals, I think there was a video that went viral of you and Gavin Pepper, who's running in this election, where you called them a gobshite. Is that still something you stand by?
Yeah, principle for mine has always been look somebody in the eye and tell them what you think about them. I don't hide behind my phones when I tell somebody what I think of them.
Mm-hmm. And on the 13 billion, there is a concern at the moment with the new administration in America. The Secretary of Commerce that looks to be likely to be coming in has been singling out Ireland and singling out the supposed prosperity that Ireland sees thanks to the taxes from multinational corporations from America, kind of threatening this idea of pulling those or forcing those companies to move back to America and reduce the tax intake on countries like Ireland. Is it an intimidating scenario for politicians in this country to kind of be proposing what we're going to be doing with such massive windfalls from these companies when they could dry up in the space of a couple of months?
Yeah, of course, that's always going to be a scary prospect. The fact that we haven't really developed any indigenous industry, or we've certainly let some indigenous industries fall by the wayside over the last number of decades, so dependent upon multinationals. But I should also say those American multinationals are here not because they're doing us a favour in and of itself. We've got an incredibly educated workforce. We're very strategically located. We've given as much to the Microsofts, the Apples, as they've given to us. I appreciate we're very dependent upon them for their taxes, but they're also very dependent upon us because of what we've already done to build their organisations here. I mean, we have an incredibly well-educated population. I think the same, what I've heard from many of the multinationals when they talk about what puts their presence here in danger, again, it goes back to infrastructure. It goes back to the fact that their workers can't find houses, that their transport infrastructure is not up to scratch. That's the big threat we fear when the multinationals talk about their presence here. It's when Trump does Trumpian things, I mean, that'll get the headlines. But the biggest threat to Ireland at the moment is our deficit in infrastructure, housing obviously being to the fore of that.
Mm-hmm. On climate, you have in the manifesto that you're proposing €1.5 billion fund for fair transition for farmers in animal agriculture. Is that, do you envision in the course of the next government, if the Soc Dems were to get in, for this massive rejigging of the agricultural system in Ireland, to kind of step away from dairy and livestock farming into a more, renewable system? And how do you think the party itself will be perceived within farming communities for proposing a complete rejig of their livelihoods?
So one thing that's often lost when people talk to me about what did the IFA think of the Soc Dems, for example. Her party leader, Holly Cairns, is a farmer. She is a food-based farmer, and her and her mother have demonstrated really well in terms of what they've achieved. Their votes also came from farmers in West Cork. I mean, the idea that one particular cohort speak for the farming community is actually not really doesn't really come out when you look at the facts. We're the only party in this country that has a farmer leading the party. So when we talk about a 1.5 billion transition fund, it's in recognition of the fact that some areas are inevitably going to be hit harder than others as that transition happens, and we want the farmers to know that we have your back. But the farmers themselves are the ones who do. My father-in-law is a farmer in Wexford, but they know that the land is changing, they know that times are changing. They also are asking that as that happens, they're not left behind. We're backing our plans with a genuine investment in money that would make people's lives easier, farmers' lives easier.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything you'd like to add?
I think the thing for me that I'd like to add about the Social Democrats, and it's really important to us, is we do not play auction politics. Our ideas and the people leading on the ideas, so be that if it's in climate, it's Jennifer Whitmore, if it's in housing, it's Cian O'Callaghan, Rory Hearn, these are all evidence-based, the same as Roisin Shortall when she was driving the Sláinte Carl model. They're evidence-based. They're the type of ideas that any normal social democratic Republican who's relatively wealthy should be able to call for, and it shouldn't seem so strange. The Social Democrats, we don't do auction politics. We're not going to say we're going to cut this and you can equally have that. Your taxation was exactly what we need in order to pay for the public services that is going to put more money back into your pocket and have the type of revolution in climate and healthcare that this country needs.